You're listening to the Movers Union podcast. We're here to talk about movement, philosophy, and everything in between. My name is Ben Wexler.
And I am Justin Cooper. We are both movement specialists, and this is the Movers Union.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Movers Union. I am Justin Cooper once again, and
my name is Ben Wexler.
So in this episode, we're going to break down kind of our yoga experience, how we feel about it, some views on that, and our experience going through that process of being students ourselves and becoming teachers. So,
right.
Kind of taking that to you, Ben, if you want to start off with, like, what was that initial student experience, and maybe like how that transitioned into even thinking about becoming a teacher.
So we touched on this a little bit in our last episode where we're talking about like just our history and fitness and things like that. I got into yoga because I first started, like I grew up not athletic at all. And I was skinny fat for most of my life. If you know what skinny fat is, it's like when you have skinny arms and you have kind of like a belly. It's like honestly probably the least desirable physiological shape you could be in, you know? And, not athletic at all. I started to get into lifting after my first breakup. And I started thriving on it because it's when you actually really break it down, bodybuilding is a super nerdy thing to do, like, isolation and nutrition and nutrient timing and these things. And as I started to see myself develop physically, I started to get curious of other modalities that are out there. And, yoga is touted as like this, it's good for stretching, Also, it's worth mentioning that my mom and dad are both very, very spiritual people. I grew up under a completely different religion that most people have never heard of called the Baha'i Faith. And
What's
I'm
that?
not, yeah, honestly, it's a dope religion. I'm not religious anymore. But there's so many cool things that Baha'is believe, like progressive revelation, which is every prophet is a messenger of God that came down for their time to deliver a message that was relevant to that time, and over time the message evolves, which I think is really cool because looking into it, I actually just found out that in Christianity they touch on this as well. They talk about like the Torah, the Old Testament is the old way, the New Testament is the new way, and then there's going to be another coming of Christ in the future. Buddhism talks about this. And a lot of religions actually talk about it. So, a really cool religion. If you want to look into it, I definitely think you should. I'm not religious. I'm not trying to sell any religion at all. Like, I like to live my best life according to my values and what means integrity to me. So, anyway, that being said, I grew up like in a very abnormal thing. Like, I wasn't Christian. I didn't grow up Jewish. Like, we practice Hanukkah and stuff, but like not really. And so I was basically ready to so when I heard about yoga, I knew there'd be mobility, and also I knew there'd be girls there. Okay. That's definitely a valid, component. Yeah. That you gotta talk about. And I knew that there's a spiritual component about it. So I wanted to check it out. Right. And that's the full story. Okay. And
Mobility, girls, and spirituality.
Right. Which, admittedly, the second reason might not sound the best, but you got to think this was 19, 20-year-old Ben at the time. But anyways, got into it, and I was like, I liked it a lot. Like, I just felt so calm afterwards. And mind you, this is like a college yoga experience. This isn't like a studio experience. And I was feeling just calm, and I felt just really good. I actually just started to really like it. I remember like staying after class to ask the teacher about certain postures. I remember even back then I was drawn to half moon. I really liked half moon, and I wanted it to be perfect. And, and a lot of my students know now that's like easily my favorite pose. And then years went by, right? I liked it a lot in college, but I never really pursued it. Also, there's like this stigma about yoga, and like I don't know if you went through this, but it made me question a lot of things. It was like, oh dang, am I becoming like this weird yoga person now? Like that whole deal. And so I like didn't really want to fully like go into it all that much. And then years went down the line, and I ended up moving right next to a yoga studio. And then why don't we stop there for my story, and then let's switch it back to you, and like tell us a little bit more. You touched on it last time. Tell us a little bit more about like your first experience and maybe your motivations to going and that sort of thing.
My initial appeal to it was like something my brother had been doing some yoga, and he was like, yo, it's great, you should try it out, cool. So I did, and that initial appeal was like, oh yeah, like I feel good after I do this, like that's very basic and pretty universal, like
Right.
reason for liking
Consistent.
something, as well as an experience that most people have going to a yoga class. So like, it might be, oh, that's challenging, or maybe it was like that was really hard or whatever, but overall, like the sense that you get at the end is like, oh, that was cool. Like that was good. I'm more calm, peaceful, whatever. My body just feels good. I was going to say, especially if it's not something, if you're not very active at all, but probably there's a better chance of you feeling just like good in your whole body doing it if you do have some level of movement, in your life. I'm sure, and I see, a lot of people come to my class where it's like, they haven't ever done anything, and then they like really struggle through it, and it might take a few more, because you're kind of rearranging everything. You're creating this new awareness in the body. I never necessarily imagined it being like a life pursuit or whatever. But then, my brother told me similar things of like, I know you're going to the community center, but like you got to go to a studio. It's just a different experience. Great. So I went to a studio, and it was just a totally different experience. And I don't know, like the passion of the teachers, what they kind of pull into class from out of life, there's this whole other dynamic of things that they kind of bring to the table. That was great, as well as, there were a lot of girls there, which was cool. And honestly, like it wasn't too long into this process where I definitely at least had the initial thought. Maybe I wasn't 100% sold on it yet, but definitely had the initial thought like, oh, I think that like these type of people, like I think this is the type of girl that I would want to actually be with, like for life, where it's just like, because it's the whole community of it is another level of just like awareness and consciousness, where like since yoga does build that in a person, it's kind of the type of person that is drawn to it also, that is the type of person who wants to develop more awareness and not just be like totally blind or naive or ignorant to things. So I remember that being a thing where I was just like, oh, like this is, it's people trying to better themselves. It's people trying to become more aware. It's, people who are compassionate and whatever, like all these positive traits are at least the generality that comes along with it. And maybe that was part of the stereotype that you were trying to like avoid also, because you can definitely take that into that direction as well. But it was just awesome. And like we talked about before, I did it every day for, practically every day for about a month. And like, I was just like, oh, this is dope. And then I just kept doing it, like it's basically how that happened.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Like when I stepped into that studio, that power yoga studio right next to my place, it was unreal. The vibes were unreal, and everything that you're talking about, I totally felt, especially the more that I went to. What's interesting too that I'd like to point out was I had this almost like a imposter syndrome when I was going there. You know, like imposter syndrome, if you don't know what it is, the simplest version is like a compliment. If someone compliments you, your subconscious mind feels that you're not deserving of that compliment, and you sabotage yourself or that compliment. You reject the compliment. You can see the same thing in like, if you get a promotion, like if you ever notice someone that's like right about to get everything that they want, and then all of a sudden they just crash and burn. We've seen this is like a very common pattern, and it's a serious form of self-sabotage. But that being said, I almost had that. I had this imposter syndrome because I was like this gym dude, meathead guy, and like I'm in this yoga studio and I really like being there. But like I was like, I'm not sure if they want me here. Like, do they even want me here? Like, I would, mind you too, I used to be a really anxious person. Like, so anxious before yoga, and I had no idea. But the owners, which I love very much to this day, they made me feel so welcome, and even some of the other teachers too. Shout out Val if you're listening to this. Like my first class ever was with this chick I know, Val. She's really cool, and I went in and I was like so confident because I was like, yeah, I'd taken yoga before. I took 3 classes of it in college. Like, I'm about to crush this. So Warrior One shows up, and I busted out full 90-degree angle on my right knee, and I'm dying, but I'm just holding on for dear life. And then in the beginning of it all too, you have this ego, right? And I had this ego being this gym person too. I was like, I'm going to show them. Every gym person has their first yoga class, and then they get mollywopped, which is exactly what happened to me. Got mollywopped because it was Warrior One right side, Warrior One left side, do the full vinyasa. In college, we didn't do that many vinyasas, and then it was flowing Warrior Ones, and I was just like, what is this madness? This is madness. And like, I was dying. And at the end of it all, the teacher approached me and was like, you did so good. Oh my God. And I was like, she's just saying that, like I'm dying. But like little reinforcements like that is actually what kept me going back, and then, and eventually I, did the teacher training and everything down the line. But yeah, like the studio vibe is just so different, because out in the real world, right, you have the yoga mindset, right? And that comes with so many different little things about everything, like being present to the moment, and that doesn't mean just like, that means like being present in a conversation, being open, being, vulnerable in a way, objectively observing things instead of reacting to things, reacting to sensations, and there's so few of us that actually think like this in the real world, that when you get everyone together, like when you get a bunch of seasoned yogis together in a class, it's almost like a little mastermind group, It's like all these people that have the same way of thinking are together, and you're there to support each other, even if it's just through breath,
Yeah, that community aspect of it is definitely key. Like it's kind of weird that that's like such a big part, because like, right, it's a physical practice. Like it's a workout, it's mobility. Right. Like this is what most people are going there for. But there's some community aspect to being in a room with whatever X amount of people and all, breathing at the same time, moving in the same way.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which is powerful.
It's so magical.
It's definitely also, though, like there are parts of every religion that mimic that, right? Yeah. I feel like we keep coming back to like these kind of religious aspects of yoga.
Right.
But like it totally is, which is fine. And we're, as a community, as a society, a lot of us lack that for whatever reason, being that you just don't subscribe to a particular religion, or even a lot of those rituals have been kind of removed as well as like society has developed also. So having that like a place where you can go and breathe and move in communion with other people is like is really strong, I think.
Yeah, it's what you said. It kind of reminds me of it's like bars, actually. If you think about it, like you think the lie is you go to the bars to drink, but if that were the case, if drinking were the sole object of going to the bars, you wouldn't go. You would go to like the liquor store or wherever sells your favorite type of drink, and you would buy it in abundance because it's way cheaper, and you would sit at home in the comfort of your home and you would drink that way, right?
Some people do that.
Some people do that, right? But the real appeal of going to a bar isn't the drink, it's the people, you know.
Yeah, it's the excitement of meeting new people and like, oh, what could, there's this unknown aspect that's, exciting and exhilarating to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's definitely, I'd say you touched on it, really well. Like that's a strong component of going to a yoga class. It's being with other people. We don't give that enough credit. I feel like it's kind of like, it's for whatever reason, it's like uncool to say that like you want to be with other people. You know what I mean? It almost has to be this like lie,
I don't know who thinks that's uncool.
Yeah, I mean,
they're the uncool ones.
That's right. We're gonna change the paradigm. So.
I mean, it's true. We're communal beings. Like why are we even doing this? We're like sitting,
right.
We schedule time to sit down and talk to one another for an hour or whatever, like to see. And yeah, we're recording and we're gonna put it up for other people. But like in reality, if this process wasn't also like joyful or beneficial or whatever, like we wouldn't be doing it at all. Nor would anybody want to watch it, at all. So
right.
It's like there's this. This is like we're made to do this type of thing. We're made to sit. I mean, probably more ideally around a group of like 8 to 10 people and like just talk and like one person tells stories and the other people listen and like back and forth, whatever. Like that's how we grew up. Like that's what we evolved to do. That's what humans evolved doing. So there's this very kind of visceral desire for this, and as everything gets more and more separated with people, like the more we desire this. So this is great. Like and especially right now, we're the most separated because like of the coronavirus and whatnot. We're like, yet we're still, everybody's yearning to do something like this, or if anybody is just at home by themselves and they don't have to go anywhere for work because they work from home and they don't really have to communicate with anybody for their work and whatever, like they're going crazy, like you need some sort of connection in order to keep things going. There's something to that human interaction.
I'll never forget, all the people in 2019 were still posting like memes about being like invited to things and then brushing plans off, memes about like how they don't like being around people, those kinds of memes, right? In 2020, all of those vanished. All of those are gone now, and now everyone's just like, oh God, like I can't wait to be able to do things again, and it's just like, well, the veil has been lifted, now
That's what happens with everything though. Like when you have something in abundance, like you get used to it, you get desensitized to it, you take it for granted, and then it gets taken away, and you're like, whoa, like I didn't realize that could happen, and then you have to do without it, and it's like, damn, it makes you really appreciate what you did have. But that's also, I feel like that's why it has to happen and why there has to be good and bad and light and darkness and sadness and happiness and all this stuff, like there, without one, you can't appreciate the other. So without the possibility of, all social interactions ending, like you're not going to truly appreciate when, just getting to go out to dinner at a restaurant with some friends, like the first time we were able to do that after once the shelter in place was starting to ease up a little bit, like, and we were able to go to a restaurant and eat dinner with some friends, like that was so cool,
Right.
And before that, it was like, oh, I don't know, like, should we really be going out and spending this money and whatever, and maybe I'd rather stay home, or oh, I have this to do or that to do, and you find all these other excuses and things. But then when it's not available to you and it's been taken away from you, you kind of reprioritize and understand that, like, oh, how great certain things are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been going out, a little bit, like Santana Row opened up, and it was, I went to Campbell, I went to Santana Row, I went there, this and that place, and Santana Row is like the busiest of all that I've seen, but everything is like social distancing, like COVID compliant, and like every time I go, I can't help but feel this just like, there's people here. Like, it's just so, it's like so like, you never would have thought that you'd be so grateful for it. If anything, it's like, it used to just be like, oh, why are there so many people here? And now it's just like, oh my God, look at these people. And I'm just so like infatuated by the fact that there's other people, and it's still Santana Row, so everyone's dressing up, and so it's fun. Everything is like very, very deeply appreciated right now. Like even going to the store is like, yeah, like I'm gonna dress up, in a weird way. So, but anyway, yeah, community is like, it was one of the first things I learned, with yoga. It was like, whoa, like this is incredibly valuable, But what would you say? Like, what was the first like nug that you took away? Like the first nugget of wisdom that you took away from yoga?
I don't know if this is the first, but this is the first one that came to my mind. So I'll bring
Good
it
enough.
up. And it was,
Let's go.
so it was during my teacher training, so I'm already some level of commitment in, right?
Yeah.
But, and this, I'm unsure what your teacher training process is, but so much of it is just like life and self-betterment type stuff, right? Like that's, I don't know if did yours have a pretty heavy aspect of that in it?
We did 3 different parts. So we did we had our morning practice, which was 4 hours long and was brutal. And then we had break, and then we had lunch, and we had a prompt, and then we'd come back and we had what was called chair sessions, which was like confidential. Everybody had to like sign a agreement and stuff. And then you were encouraged to share it, but obviously they couldn't make you share it. But me, I wanted to get my money's worth, so I shared every single time, and it was magical. And it changed my life, absolutely changed my life. And then in the evening, we had practice teaching sessions. But yeah, the easily the most valuable chunk to me was the middle chunk, was the chair sessions. And that was kind of, I don't know what your structure was like, but yeah, it was, because I talk to people that do teacher trainings all around the world. If you've never done teacher training and you don't know, like teacher trainings are different, so different wherever you go. It's not like a standard program. Unless you have obviously like follow one lineage, then they have how they do things. I talked to some teachers though that went through their training, and it was all like anatomy and philosophy and just like learning those kinds of things, but not
and
so
just
much
like asanas.
self. Right. And like they look at me like, whoa, like you didn't read the Yoga Sutras, because we didn't. And I look at them like, you don't have chair sessions, like,
Yeah.
What was yours like though?
So
Like you said, it was
sounds
really
like,
about like self-betterment and stuff. So.
yeah, a lot of it was, and it wasn't as like like I can't give you a daily schedule and be like, oh, this was when this type of thing happened every
Right.
time, because each day, or maybe even more each week, kind of varied, where like there would be a different type of thing highlighted. Either way, this one session, and the teacher leading this part of it is a lady named Maylai. She led this one session that was it was all about voice, right? So voice obviously being an important part of being a teacher and kind of finding your voice, whatever. But I tell this story fairly often, and I just think it was such an amazing exercise. She started off, whatever, she's talking about voice and finding everybody's voice, whatever. And then she prompted us to write a letter to our voice. Okay? So like
Whoa.
write a letter as if you're talking to what your voice is, and so you're examining kind of your internal feelings towards what your voice is like, And I'm very definitely on the introverted side and whatnot, and did at that point, and still do, wish that I had more, I don't know, more power in my voice, was a little more confident or whatever. Mm-hmm. So whatever, you write that, whatever that might be, and we talked about it a little bit, and then she was like, okay, now you're going to write a letter from the point of view of your voice responding to that letter.
Whoa.
And since obviously you have both sides of these stories, because they're all you, right? So then you're responding to your like initial criticisms of your voice, basically, as your voice. And then I believe the last portion of that was basically a response back from yourself to your voice in like, what your kind of what you can do and what you will do to like help reconcile whatever was going on in those letters, right? And then after that, I feel like this was even the more powerful part, where she had everybody, the option to share it, right? And so we go, there are like 30 of us. I don't know if all 30 shared, but you figure, maybe 20 or so people share. And you go around the room, and of course, there are plenty of people who are more extroverted. There are people who are more introverted, whatever. But literally every person that shared everything has some insecurity about their voice. The people who are more introverted are like, yeah, I kind of like notice that I talk so much and try to be so loud or whatever because I'm insecure that, somebody might find out whatever about me, that I'm not actually as happy, or I'm not actually as smart, or I'm not actually whatever, this or that. That was basically the broad scope of what all of the extroverts said. And then all of the introverts are basically like, that they don't talk as much because the same reason. They're scared that, they'll be found out, or they don't want to feel a certain way or make somebody feel a certain way, or be found out that, maybe they don't know what they're talking about or whatever. So like then each person, literally everybody in the room, is coming from the exact same place. And it's just, well, some people are choosing to, respond to that and try to bolster themselves by talking more and being louder, and some are doing the opposite. But both of them, so literally every single person has these insecurities and things that are just forcing you to do it. So it's like everybody's in the same exact boat, And that was just like a huge realization to me, where it's like, oh, we're all struggling with the same thing. It's just obviously people choose to deal with it in different ways, but like that's just a human trait, to be insecure and not fully sure of yourself or whatever, and you hear that from everybody, from anybody who is successful as well, will tell you the same thing. They have those same thoughts, So yeah, that was just a huge takeaway.
Yeah. So like with the takeaway, like one of the things, like I realized the exact same thing, because we had a very similar thing. And for me, it was like, I realized that these are just human problems. And the fact that everyone has to deal with the same things actually kind of gave me permission to dismiss worrying about them entirely. You know? I was just like, oh, well, if everyone worries about this, then I'm just not going to worry about it. You know?
Exactly, yeah. And especially when it's like, and it's like, oh, everybody worries about not being good enough. Like, well, then, it totally discounts it. And not that you can't or shouldn't feel like that or that it's bad to, but it's just like everybody feels like it. So we're all on the same, we're all on the same level, If I'm feeling really insecure about myself, but then like I'm talking to you and understand that you probably feel the same way, then it's like, if anything, that's just something more to connect on and like try to make that person feel more comfortable or whatever, and that will in turn make you feel more comfortable too. So there's like that. It's just we're all on the same boat, and I like how you put it that these are all human problems, and like if they're human problems, it's certainly nothing to be ashamed about,
Yeah, and it's like we talked in like I think episode 1. Buddhism says life is suffering. It's like the first noble truth of Buddhism, and like I think that this touches on that, and I think that this is also why every human deserves respect and compassion, respect and understanding. I really believe every single human deserves this, is because we all deal with the same things. We all want the same things. It's how we go about getting them that's different. Everyone wants safety. Everyone wants to feel loved. Everyone wants to feel happy, but it's like we get lost in like, okay, does safety mean opening up our borders or closing our borders? Does safety mean wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, and that kind of thing. But at the heart of it all, we all want the same things, So the first thing, so I'll answer it for me now. The first thing that the day one, when I was like, I'm in this for life, it was like during my 2-week trial where I started to realize I lose a lot of people when I talk about this because it's out there, But so try to stay with it and just try to accept that I'm not crazy, because like a lot of other people, like you could read about what I'm about to explain to you, and I'll give you books if you need them. Right? Power of Now, Journey into Power, I'll talk about this. I basically was like in my bedroom, and something had triggered me to feel anxious. And again, I was a super anxious person, super anxiety prone. And I noticed the trigger, and instead of going down the same pattern, like, cause it's like the way your brain works is it's like stimulus, and then you respond, and then you have like a belief and 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 a belief, and then you have a reaction, right? So it's like all these assumptions all the way, and it's like happens at lightning speed. So I like caught the stimulus and like noticed that I was riding down that wave again and stopped. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, and then I flipped out about me catching it. I was like, why did I just catch this? What the hell is happening? And then like that just kept happening, and that just kept snowballing. And I mean, to this day, that still happens. It's like, oh, here's an autopilot moment, stop this, time to pick a new path. I feel like the day we begin to die is not the day we like leave our body. It's the day that you just do the same things the same way over and over again, right? Humans are patterns. We just do the same. That's why you can have the same reaction from different people when you say the same thing, So it's like, do the new thing. Like, try to do it new, because if you just respond the same old way, you think the same old way, you're literally just a pattern, and you're not even really like you're not even being a creator in your life. You're just moving through it, So that was like, for me, it was like, whoa, there is something to this. And then I started to read about it. I started to really get a grip on it. And then the rest is history. I did my teacher training. I talked about it last time. Signed up for teacher training on my birthday. I just full sent it. Again, I was kind of going through this like identity thing. I was like, oh no, like, am I really going to be a yoga teacher now? Like, is this who I'm going to be? Like, I'm going to be this guy? And then, like, I'm just being totally honest.
No,
Like, this is
yeah.
exactly what I thought, you know? Because I could sit here and be like, yeah, I knew since day one I was going to. No, like, I was like, no, shit. Like, this is going to be, I'm going to be that guy now, you know? And then, like, you know, and then, but I, you know, as a gift to myself, I was like, I'm doing this. And it was life-changing for sure, you know?
I think that realization is one of the biggest ones that comes from yoga, like that ability to, you know, notice something happening and then choosing how to act as opposed to just blindly reacting to it.
Right.
You know, that's such a huge component of like yoga or any practice of mindfulness or anything. And I feel like that is something that every person needs, and it's not even necessarily like, oh, doing yoga is like the only way to find that. No, but like anybody listening to this who, you know, we say that and they're kind of like, what? I don't know. Like, if you don't understand that, like there are plenty of resources, like you said,
Yeah.
to start to dive into that. So yeah, just
Yes.
like a Google of like what basic mindfulness is, or, you know, The Power of Now, these books like that. You know, I'm sure there'd be another nice YouTube clip that explains it very
Yes.
even more precisely. But like, that's something, if you hear this and it sparked any little bit in you, like, go do more of a dive in that. And if you do already know what we're saying, just try to practice that as much as you can. And you know, that advice for us as well, because it's not
Yes.
easy to do all the time. Like, it's, you know, it's certainly, that is a practice in and of itself. But it is such like an amazing kind of superpower to be able to do that, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's so well said. Oh my God, so well said. Yeah, like if you already know to do this, get back on your horse if you've fallen off. And if you kind of like listen to what I was saying and we're like, okay, I don't know about all this. Like, no, this is well documented. Like, this is why I teach yoga. This is why I do what I do. And I'm sure you as well, you know, is because of that, you know. It's because, and that's, so, okay, let's get real weird, all right? Consciousness. We're going to talk about consciousness. So, okay, consciousness, all that means is like, basically like awareness. So, the reason that you have so many autopilot like beliefs, or not autopilot, but autopilot reactions, is because you're not fully aware of them. Right? Would you agree? Like, if you were fully aware of everything that you would do and all the, you know, the reactions and how those behaviors tend to play out, you wouldn't keep doing the things that are hurting you. You would change them. You know, many times, that's why, like, the Bible says, I can't believe I quote the Bible so much on this show, because, like, I'm not Christian. I was never raised Christian.
Hey, it was a good book.
Like, it says, Father, right? They all are, to be honest, in my opinion. But like, it's like, you know, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And like, yeah, people don't know, like, you don't know how much harm you're causing. And that's like, at the heart of it all, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, it increases your awareness. It increases your consciousness. And it just makes you a better person. That's it, you know?
Yeah, to touch on that just a little more, to give people more of an understanding, you know, of that concept, because I think we can do a pretty good job of it, is like, we can all think of examples that are just automatic responses, right? And like you said, if you were to like consciously be aware of every single thing that you did or every movement that you made like throughout the day, like, you just wouldn't be able to handle it, right? Like,
Right.
like you can't. So
Yeah.
we've evolved to automate a lot of these things, and even if you know, have to take it down to like basic bodily functions, it's like, those are things that you don't have control over, or at least that you don't control the majority of the time. Breath being a huge, you know, example of that, right? If you're not thinking about breathing, you're going to continue to breathing. Can you, though, stop and think about it and alter the way in which you're breathing? Obviously, you can't totally cease to breathe because that wouldn't be good, but like, you can choose how to do it and how to go about it. And in the same way, whatever is happening in your life, if you're not consciously aware or like trying to make an attempt to respond to it in a certain way, whatever deeper pattern that you have that you've built through your childhood and into your adulthood, whatever, like that just automatic process will easily take over because it's way easier, it's more efficient for the body and the mind to just keep doing something that it's just always done, and it doesn't like have another way. It's just that one path, and you can think about like a field of tall grass with that one path through it, like because people will like walk down this path, and eventually all the grass gets stepped on, eventually it turns to dirt, and then there's this one path. And it would seem crazy to try to go through that field any other way other than that one path, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what your thoughts are doing. But you can choose to not do that. You can choose to consciously start walking another path. And maybe it's a little harder. It is, because you have to like stop and consciously make that decision to do it. But you can go down that path, and maybe you need a couple tools. Maybe you need a machete or whatever to get through there. But eventually, that becomes a slightly more viable option. And then the more that you do choose to go down that path, it turns into the same type of path as the original one, except you chose to make this one because it's better for you, as opposed to the path that you were just going on blindly from when you were a kid, and you couldn't think like this because your mind wasn't developed in a way that allowed you to.
And that was really well said. I really like that path analogy too, because that's actually how your brain works, like with neurons. So if you don't know about your brain, you basically have electrical wires in your brain called neurons, and they link together to form different like thoughts and behaviors and reactions in our example, right? And the more you react a certain way, the more you think something, the stronger it gets, and the more beaten down the path gets. So the more easy it is for those electrical impulses, or people in this example, it is to like walk down that path. So it's so hard to deviate from it, because again, it's a beaten path, and it's like, why wouldn't you not? But you don't actually know how bad it's hurting you, So awareness, slowing it down and doing that new thing and not doing the same thing, switching it up, so important.
All right, cool. I think that's a great point to end it on. We can wrap it up here. So, stay well, stay safe, and see you next time.
Take care.